It is on page 521. It's about the sixth line from the bottom.
Oh, yeah. I'm just picking this up now. There's no change to the recommendation, is there?
No. No change to the
Okay, so is there
recommendation.
sorry, Councillor Barnard, you're okay with that?
I just would like to know where this is funded from. When you said it's a district regeneration budget, it comes now from green space, not onto the earthquake loan, is that correct?
So the car and boat trailer parking at the Coast Guard is a regeneration project funded from the earthquake recovery loan. The Ashkeaton boat ramp upgrade is a green space activity budget.
Last year we actually stated that at some point we have to stop putting extra money in on the earthquake recovery loan and get back to business as usual. If you need to actually increase this budget, why wouldn't it be done through the recreation budgets rather than adding to the earthquake loan?
It was in the, I think what you're saying is it was always intended to be in the regeneration. It's always been signalled as a regeneration project to be funded under the earthquake recovery loan. The reality is if we shift it from that and put it in the green space budget and fund it through the green space, the same ratepayers across the same district will have the same rating effect.
So my understanding of Ashkeaton, and going back to that, from early days, was that that was going to be abandoned. Has that position changed?
I don't think the community board's made a decision on that at this stage, so that's why they elected for the interim fix in the meantime, to allow time, and it's noted in the report, there's a proposal to do a river use plan, just to consider this matter alongside other matters, and that includes consideration around what may happen in some of the mixed-use business areas nearer to the town centre as well, in case that has an effect on some of those decisions around access to the river and the like.
Okay, any further questions? You're prepared to move those? So seconded there with the changes that we indicated in the you're clear on those, Adrian? The yes with those changes. Yep, just checking. Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, look, I understand a little bit of the confusion around this. It's always the boat park's actually always been in the loan. Yes, it is extended out a little bit more, and it is a little different. Just for some clarity, certainly around the community board and discussions we've had with Duncan and the team around this. If you drove up Jones Street, Jones Street, I think it is, that comes out at the back of the Coast Guard. There's a sign there that says boat ramp pointing towards Ashkeaton. Interestingly enough, if you go over the bank, there's a boat ramp. So anybody who's new looking for the boat ramp will automatically drive to Ashkeaton and try and launch in that diabolical mess down there while missing the point of the Coast Guard ramp. So it's a bit of an anomaly in the way that we've done things there, but it's all, if you get it for the right purpose, you know, it's just the way it has worked. If you come down Charles Street, well then no problem, you probably pick off the first boat ramp, which is the Coast Guard. We have noticed, we did put a placeholder in everybody's mind in the original stages that we would give Ashkeaton a couple of 3 years and see if that started to dwindle while the other one took off a bit. And unfortunately in that couple of 3 years not much has happened to actually change everything. It's almost a business as usual type situation. However, we've noted that there are more people using the Coast Guard ramp now than there is. The locals are the ones that use the Ashkeaton, and for the reason they don't want to travel another kilometre at 5 knots to get to where they're going just to go fishing, and I absolutely get that argument. The other thing and complicating factor that we need to actually include this for is the fact that, as you will have read by your emails yesterday, the Motorhome Association is going to take up a deal in the space down there. A lot of those people tow boats. It will be very interesting to see whether they launch at the Coast Guard or whether they prefer the Ashkeaton, which means that we do have to sink some money in there. I actually, just to reiterate what I saw and told the community board one day, there was an older gentleman who was clearly new to launching his boat at our district, and when he got back to pick up his boat, he opened the door of his car and the water poured out. So that actually shows you how low Ashkeaton is, and arguably is still sinking. So spending a lot of money on it is, in my view, not a great idea. But the plan that Duncan's talking about will help us hopefully identify whether we do need it or not. Number two, is there somewhere else? And we did try and investigate that when we put the regeneration plan into place, and there really wasn't any other spots to put a boat ramp. So all of that's a bit of a complication. So we've sort of got to hang on for another couple of 3 years, and hopefully the 61,000 will do that, and see if what we'd planned in the last couple of 3 years actually comes to some fruition. Because if they start using the Coast Guard dying off down the other end, well, then the decision's made easy. If that doesn't happen and the reverse happens, then we've got a bit of an issue coming. But the fact you can't park your boat and things there, and the reality is that increasing that budget, there is no question on a Saturday morning in time to come when the sports fields are used and there's a market on in the middle of Guiboy and all of those things, and you want to park your boat, may become in that area a little difficult. But it's about sort of placeholders for monitoring purposes, really, and I stand to be corrected if I've read that wrong and people see that differently.
Councillor Brackett. Any further speakers? Councillor Mealings, followed by Councillor Bowman.
Just having used that boat ramp recently and been kayaking up the river a bit recently, last weekend when we went up, we put in at Ashkeaton, and there were probably about 12 different boats and vehicles down at Ashkeaton. There was one at the Coast Guard. And I mean, and that's notwithstanding the fact that I basically launched my kayak from the parking lot because there was enough water to do so. And whenever we got back, we picked it up and carried it across a lot of mud back up to the car. So I can actually see at the moment, until people catch on, maybe, having that placeholder and making that usable. And also, as we do develop further, down there with the other facilities we've got down that end of the regeneration area, it makes sense to leave that available. And for the other reason that a lot of those boats that were down there were, just like my colleague here said, were people that didn't want to have to navigate the extra kilometre or so down the road, down the river to the mouth whenever they went fishing. I don't see any problem with passing this the way that it is written here, and I'll support it.
Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak, or do you want a question? Councillor Deed, you can ask your question first.
I just want to clarify, please, that with this at the moment, if you want to do more development with it, will that be on the earthquake loan funding or what?
It's a question to start.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Are you asking whether if in the future we want to do more development at Ashkeaton,
Yeah.
would that be on the earthquake recovery loan?
Yeah.
No, the development that we're doing at the moment at Ashkeaton, the $61,000 is currently in the green space budget, not
Right, okay. I just want to clarify that that's...
Yeah. So if we wanted to do more at Ashkeaton in the future, then
Yeah.
it would be likely that we'd be going onto the recreation account
Okay.
as opposed to the earthquake recovery account.
Yeah, that's good. I just need clarification.
Okay. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, my questions, I'm totally supportive of people using the Kaipo River. I love the Kaipo River, and I think everyone should be using it as much as possible. But the truth is, people use what's available. So if we shut down Ashkeaton tomorrow, they would go and use the Coast Guard because it's available. So you go with habit. I mean, that's just normal, and I totally get that. And it has been a really good area. But I still remember Craig Sturgeon talking about trying to put gravel in and how it just disappeared. And the more we dumped down there, the more it just disappeared and disappeared. We can't We really, back then, it was like we couldn't fix it. And so therefore it was decided it would have to be abandoned. And this was way back when, before your time in that space, in district regeneration. So I don't know what the future is, and we'll have to look at that. Maybe it's a lagoon for the kayaks, or maybe it's something completely different. I mean, I don't know, but I'm concerned about sinking a lot of money into an area that is sinking. All right. Today we're talking budgets, and so that's why I wanted to question this. I've made the point over the last couple of years is that I think the earthquake loan needs to be almost closed. We set a budget, and from now on we need to start saying, okay, this is now, we're past this stage. We've got to get to the point where the whole district knows what they're paying for as an overall district, rather than looking at just regeneration in this area. We set some budgets, we did some changes, we've added some more, but it's not an endless fund. So that's why I was concerned about increasing this budget under the earthquake loan. And I know that this comes out of the same budget, it comes out of the same pocket if you put it in green space, but it's the principle to me, is that we are now in a new stage, in a new decade, and we need to move forward. So I just want to be very cautious about any projects. I mean, this is 23-24 year, that means we're still paying out regeneration money out of that loan in the 23-24 year, when effectively we should be trying to pay it off and then look at our development as a district and what's good for the district. And having boat launching facilities is really good for the district. So that's my only caution, is where it sits. And I want to make that completely clear, because we have been saying that for a couple of years. That I'm certainly happy to include it, but I do want to make the point that we've just got to stop topping up that budget.
Councillor Regen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually supportive of Keaton. Since 1981 or 2, I've been trying to have a jetty in the river there to facilitate boat launching and retrieval. The earthquake was an unfortunate event, and it has posed challenges for Keaton, but Councillor Mealing's observation, 12-1, mirrors my impression. People don't like launching at the Coast Guard boat ramp because it's not user-friendly to launch. The vision going over the bank, and how you've got to back and manoeuvre and so on, it's a nightmare. I have also mentioned in the past about having a different system there, so you drive past the Coast Guard and exit on the other side of the building, and maybe if that happened it would become more popular. So it'd be interesting to see whether the car park there will generate more launching at the Coast Guard. So I'm happy to go along with this, but in the long term, unless things change, I still think Keaton has a role for launching. Certainly very popular in my view.
Who are the speakers? Right, reply.
Well,
Well said.
yeah. The earthquake loan, I'm not going to disagree with Councillor Barnett. We need to wind that loan up. I get that. This is part that's been in there the whole time, and I mean, it just reflects the true costs of a project that's always been indicated. It's not a new project. It is a project that's there. So, if we were starting new projects, I would be exactly of that opinion that we need to do it in another way. So I don't take umbrance with that at all. Interesting, Councillor Redmond's take on the Coast Guard boat ramp. I've sat at many boat ramps. In fact, I encourage you, if you're ever in Havelock, to go to the restaurant in Havelock. The restaurant is actually right on the boat ramp, and there's an afternoon's entertainment just watching people trying to back into the river. But interestingly, most people back, and when they make a mistake, they go at right angles. If you do that at the Coast Guard, you actually end up in the water. So it actually helps you rather than hinders you. I don't disagree with the in and out of Coast Guard, and that has actually been on the plan since day one. The plan that's been put in front of us every time shows that you go in there and then you take a right-hand turn and you go out over the top of the stop bank and into the park. That was Coast Guard had something to say about that, because you were crossing their emergency doors. In reality, I'm not quite sure that that's that's quite exactly how it should work, because I think you find that once sirens go off, no matter where, people get out of the way pretty damn quick. So I think that more of a thought than a reality. But the reality with Ashkeaton is that people do use Ashkeaton for exactly the reasons you're talking about, is habit, 1. 2, ease, I get that, because that's what they've always done. And number 3, because we have a damn sign that says that's where the boat ramp is, right in front of where the other boat ramp is. So it just, I mean, that doesn't make logical sense that that's there. But I get why it is there, because you want people launching their boats, you know, and making sure that they do it safely, quickly, and get out of the way. The first time I've heard about Councillor Redmond wanting to put a jetty at Ashkeaton. I think I've been on the board for 20-something years, and I've been here for 19 years. First time I've actually officially heard that that's happened. I've never seen an official approach yet for that.
Right, okay.
But
we just move on.
But what I'm saying is that both of these things, that we just need a bit of time to just get the real truth about where things are falling and what they're doing. And we can do some really simple things to make sure that we've got that truth.
Thank you. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Okay, so we've got 2 budget items for you, Duncan, that you're responsible for. So your budget page is 504. Anything you want to highlight in those particularly? We'll have read these, so anything you wish to highlight?
I'll keep it very brief, but really just to summarise, starting with the earthquake recovery budget, so from 504 onwards, it's similar with the regeneration one as well. Generally, these are all existing projects that we've just put up again. From a point of view from the earthquake recovery program as opposed to the regeneration, the recreation component of that's almost come to an end. There's a couple of final projects to finish in the Kaiapoi River area, which is really the rowing precinct in Murphy Park, which have been had to be pushed out again, related to decisions around Kaiapoi croquet. It's probably more dominated now by the balance of the town centres projects that I understand you considered yesterday morning. And there is one stormwater project left in there, which is now actually it's tied up with or related to the shovel ready program of works to do with the Feldwick train. So yeah, as I say, no significant changes. There's a couple of new items that were added to the budget. Page 513, just the last couple of lines there. One related to the non-slip treatment for the Riverview terraces, and there was another item there for some final decommissioning of the dewatering ponds on Corcoran Reserve that we use for the dredging.
Thanks, Duncan.
That's the earthquake recovery. I can
Any
pause there.
questions on earthquake recovery? Thank you, Duncan.
Okay.
District Regen, so page 514.
Yeah, similar story. Again, no real changes there. There were a couple of projects that have actually just been pushed out a year or split over 2 years now. And just note that there was one new project added, which was a cycle training track, which is out in year 10 of the long-term plan.
Okay. Any questions, Al?
On 516, Duncan, that Kira rec, what does that mean? An eco, I know what the eco linkage means in Phil, but what's Kira got to do with that?
Sorry, yeah, Kira in this sense is Kaiapoi East Regeneration Area. It's not the Residents Association.
Not the area
No,
association.
no.
Gotcha.
Yep, so it's pinched our acronym. Yep.
Any further questions, Councillor Atkinson?
I'd 16 car park and car boat trailer park, 153k. Is that the right figure?
It's just because it's noting it as a carryover. So that's the existing budget that's carried forward. Yep.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you, Duncan. Thanks for all your work in this area. Appreciate it. All right. We're going to move to the regulation. Oh, sorry. What we So we got it. Is Chris got an overhead anywhere? No.
Yeah, yeah. Let me talk
Chris Brown.
No,
No, it's all done. We've done that.
So
Yep, that's all right. I was just double checking. Dismissed. Thanks, Chris.
Right.
Right, so we're now up to planning and regulation management. I'm looking forward to hearing what Tracy's got to say today.
So look. Right. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
We are really got the finishing line in sight, and with that we've got our planning and regulation budget to work through, and it'll be a tag team effort between us all as to trying to present and answer the budgets. I think the quick overview is that most of them have a strong status quo feel to them. There's a couple of things on civil defence, and Chris, thanks for coming along today. When we get there, you can come and help answer any of the really tricky questions that might come, but we've got a good handle on that as well. So you'll be pleased to know that you can put diligent away. So diligent is done for the day, other than if you want to look at the resource centre for the. So we're just now in our sheets. And the first budget to look at is it starts at page 522, which is the Planning, Regulation, Management Overhead Budget. This was prepared by Nick before his departure, retirement, and absolutely a status quo budget. It provides for that manager role, and the other significant item in there is legal fees, which invariably we need to spend dealing with the tricky issues we get from time to time, but it's pretty much a status quo budget, which is reflected on page 526. Happy to take any questions in respect.
Any questions for Tracy? No? All right. Moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. So that gets us to plan implementation unit, and Matt, happy to hear your introduction.
Thanks, Jim. So very much similar to the manager budget in the sense that it's very much a status quo budget.
Could you speak a bit closer to the mic?
Sorry,
Matt?
yep, very much a status quo budget reflecting that we've just had sort of steady growth of resource consent numbers over the last few years, and that's certainly continuing towards the start of this year. I do make note of the upcoming RMA reforms, which haven't been factored into the later years of the budget, but they will certainly create some changes that we'll need to work through. In addition to that as well, the district plan review and just working through the consenting regime for that. Probably the only other point to point out is some slight changes to fees and charges categories, and for the most part they either go down or sort of there's a slightly different charging regime, but in essence the costs for the deposits don't go up. So yes, very much a status quo budget for the next 2 to 3 years, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions of Matt? All right. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for all your work and your team's work in that area. Appreciate it. So we're up to building unit. So that's page 535. Warren.
Okay. Good afternoon, councillors. Like Matt, this is pretty much a best guess of what we think the future is going to hold the next year. And as we found out in December, all of our guesses weren't particularly good, to be fair. We ended up with something in the order of 2 months worth of work turning up in 3 weeks. So that has its own challenges, which we're currently working through. But nonetheless, looking at this longer term issue, the one that I dare say has exercised a bit of interest is the change in fees for the heating units. And I got a note there from a councillor to say, would we consider splitting this over a couple of years? I have no problem with that at all. So just need a bit of a steer on that for what the councillors would like as far as the heating units go.
So what is the increase in the heating unit?
Well, it goes from $390 to about $400. You're seeing eyeglasses, $480, which is quite a jump, but it really is a bit of an average of what we've sort of spent on heating units. They become a, you know, we're not a loss leader. We just end up doing the work for a lot less than it costs us, to be fair. Yeah.
Is there any objection to spreading that over a couple of years? So there, there's your steer.
Okay, thank you
Yep.
very much.
Thank
That's
you.
fine. Apart from that, the budget, there are a couple of line items in the expenses that have jump off the page at you, and one being the changes to the software for GoGet, or a 100% increase. And this is what happens when a ma and pa own a business and it gets taken over by a corporate, and everything's up for grabs. So it's double the price basically for that, and if we want to use the system, that's the cost. So we've just left that in the system. We've got a wee bit of additional costs, or we've actually clawed back what it cost to do with training for Regulation 18. So we need to have people with technical qualifications, and that's where that extra sort of 27,000 case comes from. If we go down to another line item, which would be the internal transfers costs for IT support's gone up by $48,000. But apart from that, it is pretty much business as usual, really. Does anyone have any questions?
Councillor Ward?
Thank you. This looks really good. I notice for the budgeting purposes, the budget increases each year, and the main budget is based on building or rates increases of dwellings and things at 480 average per year. And yeah, we've had a bit of a slowdown, but we've exceeded that this year. But they see in 22-23 year, consent numbers will rise to 600 to 640 per annum. And given that Silverstream and there's another retirement village about to be started, Ravenswood and Rangiora East, am I right in thinking that the income budgets based on dwellings that are builds in the region over the next 10 years are going to be well underestimated?
It may well prove to be true, but we have to start with something. So we've gone on a bit of a whatever, to some extent, as a conversation we've had with some of the developers to sit there and go, what's the timing of these turning up? And you've got a subdivision down in Ravenswood for 100 and something sections. That sounds like a lot, but it's not really, in the sense of we can easily, that's probably 3 months worth of work. But look at the land development that's going on. Some of the timing around that is really our issue. And we know that some of the stuff that's going on with the retirement complexes, they will have an influence on us. But just when they turn up, it's actually quite hard to predict. I think Jim's about to say something as well.
Yeah, look, Warren's absolutely right. For our long-term plan, we base our growth in number of households based on stats projections, and we pick that middle high variant, and it's going to. And we anticipate in 10 years we get to 78,000 as a population. In terms of our growth, apart from perhaps the first year or so, we straight line that, as Jeff indicated yesterday, that's 4,800 new households over the 10 years. We've always been a bit above that, but to make our assumptions in our budget line up, we need to show that we've used consistent assumptions. If we said, well, we've got 4,800 household growth over the 10 years, but we then go and plan for building unit to have, say, 600 lots a year, that's 7,200, and somebody comes along and says, well, hold on, that doesn't reconcile. Now, new lots created and new house builds don't necessarily correlate 100%. So there is a bit of estimation around the edges, and Warren uses his best guess based on what he knows off the market, but overall we try and flatten it so it doesn't look too out of line. But the reality is it'll be what it is. If somebody asked, would Selwyn still be doing 800 households a year this many years on from their peak, where people have gone, no. We don't have the land though at the moment to continue to drive, and that's our biggest factor that we're all conscious of, so that is an issue. But the good thing with the building unit is Warren has arrangements in place, positive and negative, to manage the volume. So with the use of consultants, contractors is able to scale up and down to try and live within acceptable timeframes and cost pressures. So it's our best guess today, and all we know is that it'll be wrong, but it won't be too far wrong.
Okay. All right. Any other questions of Warren? Oh, Councillor Williams.
At the moment, it's only sitting around about 12 or 13 days. But that's statutory days, not calendar days, I might add. And it's been on a statutory stop over Christmas. So even though people might be counting, the statutory clock is not moving, but it has started again. But to sort of, rather than allow customers to wonder and scratch their head that nothing's happening, on Monday there'll be a series of emails going out weekly to customers to give them a heads up when we estimate we'll be picking up their job to start. Because it's likely we'll end up with a percentage of jobs that will go over 20 working days. Probably the first time we've been in this position for 10 years, to be fair. And it takes a while to ramp up. When you end up with sort of 2.5, 3 months worth of work turning up in 3 weeks, it takes a while to scratch your head and work out where you're going to get some capacity from. We're getting there, but it's going to take us a few weeks to get the deck chairs all sorted. But we'll get it sorted. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Right. Okay. Any further questions? Don't think there's any amendments proposed. So thanks, Warren. Appreciate you and the team's work.
Now,
All right. So we've now got. Why don't we deal with environmental services and civil defence, and then we might have a break.
Yep.
Okay.
So environmental health, environmental services. This budget.
Thank you.
Thanks, Warren.
Thanks, Warren.
This budget was prepared by Nick and Tracy, who are both no longer with us. So between Matt and myself, we'll try and answer any questions. Again, essentially a status quo budget. There's a suggestion dollar nudge in dog registration fees, which is probably, I think, just at the margins to keep just to keep nudging that along, which isn't too bad. There is parking in town centres. You know, there's a little more work being done on enforcement. In one of the capital budgets, you'll see an outlier for portable electronic parking devices. It's a placeholder sitting out half a dozen years to say probably electronic technology to support town centre parking will be needed, and there's still some further work to be done around that. The technology, I understand, is changing reasonably quickly in that space as to how best to deliver those type of services. So it's an acknowledgement that things will change there, and we probably should, and it goes with the rest of the town centre parking strategy work as to what's the best mix of solutions to help manage parking demand and parking availability. There is an ongoing need for us to look at the after hours contract and how effective we are delivering that, and I know Tracy Tierney, when she arrives, one of the things that she will be thinking about is the overall service provision, and it's fair to say it creaks and groans regularly, and whether there are better arrangements in place, we know that is an issue that whether that translates to a demand. Probably there is a point in time, I think, around particularly animal control where we may have to think in alternate service delivery arrangements, because the after hours service probably is not keeping pace with the expectations of our community or our council in that space. So we know that that's an issue, and we know that, and I've a great deal of confidence in Tracy Tierney's capability and to have a look at that and work with others who utilise after hours services to review that. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Barnett? And I'll come to you in a minute,
Thank you for that explanation, Jim. I got some answers back from my questions, but I'm not quite sure who did them. So
Neither am I.
Probably me.
Was that you, Matt?
Yeah, it was a combination of myself and.
Okay, cool. I'm just a bit concerned that we've had a change of personnel in the animal control area, and it's meant that some of the budgets have dropped because we've had someone retire, but the service is still remaining the same. Why wouldn't you keep the budgets at the same level rather than dropping them? I'm just concerned we won't have enough personnel in that area.
In my view, we're actually well resourced for the staff. There is a vacancy.
Yes.
That there is a structural review that Tracy Tierney will need to look at as well, with Chris Goldsmith's retirement, which is what you're referring to. We went from one officer to 2 officers to 3 officers, and we went to 4 officers in the expectation that Chris was retiring, and we're now at 3, and there's probably a workload of somewhere between 3.5. So there's a supervisor potential role that has broader than animal control responsibilities in it, but is, again, that's another matter for Tracy Tierney to look at. So I think there is, well, Matt, I'd be interested in your take on that as well, but I think there's plenty of...
I think there's enough resource dropping those budgets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so that's essentially the answer I was going to give as well. So.
Excellent. My second question was on parking. You mentioned a placeholder budget for electronics, but we were kind of promised that perhaps a bit earlier in terms of Rangiora and trying to remove the all-day parkers. Is there any other options, such as introducing a person who would be more full-time, and should we put a placeholder budget in for trying to improve enforcement in the Rangiora Town Centre?
Do you have a view on that, Matt?
Even if it's 3-4 years out, but just to have it in the actual long-term plan, because we're still getting a lot of complaints about all-day parking at Rangiora Town Centre.
I get a lot of complaints about our enforcement.
Well,
so I have to say, sorry, Matt.
So
it shows that they're doing it.
So I think similar to the dog budget, there is capacity there in doing, and I think some of it comes down to the structure of how we deliver that service, and working through that. So I don't necessarily think that there's an extra budget provision that is needed, but there's certainly it's sort of an overall view as to how we provide that service and you know what resource we use as well.
Okay.
I accept that that's, you know, I think we should be looking at that, and my suggestion is DPNR, once Tracy's settled in, start to have a conversation about what are the level of services that we're seeking, what's her take on it, and then I would say that over the course of the next year you might see yourself having a strategy that you want to reflect on.
Sounds good. Any further questions? Sorry, did you question, Councillor Williams? Yep, sorry, I was just reminding myself. Carry on, it's been a long day.
Yeah. Parking enforcement fines, I've noticed we don't even collect even 50% of them. Is there why? Is that because we don't take court action, or?
No, because my understanding is, and I'm looking almost at Jeff as well as Matt, but when a fine, you know, when we issue a parking fine and it remains uncollected, it's then referred to the court. Is that? That's my understanding.
Yes, and my observation, having sat in the role overseeing some of that over the last week, is we actually do. We are quite stringent on the ones that we waive. So,
but once it gets into the court system,
outside of us, once it's in the court
system.
Just supplementary to that, actually.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering why we can't go to a debt collection agency rather than straight to the court on that, like a civil.
Because I don't think you can take and I'm looking at Robbie almost. I'm not sure you can take a fine to a debt collector. I think it has to.
Yeah.
When I had my carers, for example, someone didn't pay their bill on their repairs to the car, you can go.
That's a debt collector, and we use debt collectors for other
Yes,
services.
So why can't we do?
Because it's a fine, it's a levied fine, it's a fine that's imposed under legislation, and as Councillor Bryan said, if somebody fails to pay that, you have the opportunity to contest that, and the contestable place for that is in court.
They still have that ability to contest it if you go through a court, for example, on the motor vehicle thing there, and that litigates.
I think the difference is the legislation provides for the court process rather than the you know, the questioning the fine process.
We've got to follow what the legislation.
I realise. I'm just wondering what.
Good question.
And one more question: we would be looking at the after hours for dogs. If a dog gets impounded, people can't get them out until Monday, apparently.
So the answer is yes, we will look at that. So there was a case recently, and I think that one had some other circumstances and context around it, but certainly that's one of the things that we will look at operationally is with our duty AMOs, can they go down and organise for that, because they will be down there doing things for the dogs. So yeah.
Councillor
I mean, I just wondered that uncollected fines, whether part of that is when we let people off the fines, whether there's a percentage of that that's carried forward. So, for instance, you get fined for no warrant, but in 28 days, if you get one, we generally take the fine back. Is that part of that unpaid fine? There would always be an element of that carried forward.
Yeah, yes.
I would suggest, would that be an element of it?
That'll be an element of it. So that doesn't automatically happen as well. So someone, even though if they say they pay the fine, they still need to apply to have the infringement removed. So there'll be an element of that people that don't carry it as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Any further questions? Don't know. All right. Okay, so we'll
Civil defence.
civil defence budget. You're welcome to come forward. Thank you. So that's page 557.
And if you hadn't caught up, Matt is our new lead civil defence controller. So when the balloon is on the way up or gone off, the alarm's gone off, Matt is the first, is now follows Nick's previous role as lead controller. So we remain in good, steady hands. Now,
okay.
This budget is actually asking for a little more than just status quo. If Brennan was here, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, he would have actually liked to have bid for even more than this, and we've sort of pared him back in his budget bid. Probably the thing he would like most is actually another civil defence officer, and the capacity of the team to do what is coming and what needs to be done in both a readiness, preparedness and response level, then there is no shortage of work to keep people busy. Now, we disappointed Brennan in our review and said, look, and given the budget constraints we're facing, we didn't see that as something we could support to council, but of course, as the officer concerned, he's certainly entitled to bring his view to your table for your consideration. So that sits there. There are a couple of other items in the budget which are of lesser amounts, which, you know, we certainly do support as a management team around education and awareness. A couple of items there, AF8 and the like. So happy to take any questions, and Chris is here, thanks Chris, to deal with the tricky ones.
You've all been ready. Did you want to add anything, Chris?
Jim, just around your commentary on another FTE. First, is it relevant? But second, what's the FTEs of other councils of similar size? And are we doing ourselves a disfavour by? And I mean, I'm not knocking what you've done as management. I just You know, where are other councils with their FTEs on?
And look, there is a contextual element to this as well, in that there is a regional review likely to that is sort of kicking off to talk about what's the best way for civil defence delivery to occur. Should it be regional with local bases, or retention of the status quo? And there's a number of different operating models around the country, and one of the reasons for that review is to provide greater capability to the region for civil defence. I would say, relative to other councils, we're not the best dressed, but we're far from the worst dressed. So I think Selwyn has 3 officers from memory, Chris.
2.5.
2.5. There are others who are, I think, failing to discharge their responsibilities, and they have a part-time civil defence officer who's also a forestry officer, who's also a dog chaser, and everything else in the business as well, and really are failing to meet their responsibilities. And so a lot of the regional effort, I think if you asked Neville Riley, is he concerned about the capability and capacity of waimakariri, while he would never say no to more, I think he would be pointing his finger elsewhere first. Most would have one as their, of our mid-sized council, would be somewhere between 1 and 2. The rurals, small rurals, just about all of them are less than 1 FTE.
Wendy?
Quick question, this AF8, are we going to bring that back again for another viewing elsewhere? It was very successful.
Certainly that's what Brennan's intention is to push out an AF8 presentation to the whole district, and that's part of the reason for the extra person as well. But not just looking at the parents, but also looking at schools and that sort of stuff as well, so getting in at the ground level. But yeah, so he's certainly looking at that along with the tsunami risk with the change in modelling that's come out just recently.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Becky?
The current officers haven't got the skill set to do education in the secondary schools, which is going to be a growing need. Have we thought about seconding Sam as a youth officer in that role? Would that be a possibility?
I certainly couldn't answer that.
More broadly, we have been thinking about how do we deliver education services across the whole gambit of our council activity, solid and hazardous waste, some of our other education activities such as drainage and waterways. We are thinking about how we could better deliver those in those programs, and I think the readiness and preparedness activities of civil defence certainly sit within that. But I would agree with Brennan that it's a different set of skills to those. The technical capability obviously rests in the team, but it's a different, the actual teaching and delivery skills are a different skill set. So I would acknowledge that, and further support would be a good thing.
But Chris, you're working in with Sam at the moment with the cadets, and the other Sam works with quite a number actually in terms of collaborating.
Yeah, so we deal with basically the high school, 12 to 18-year-olds. Not too much of an issue there. It's the primary schools is where the big issue is. Dealing with kids of that age is mostly probably where Brennan and I come from, military backgrounds. So if you want to produce a lot of soldiers, we could do that for you with those kids. But yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Bartlett, do you have a question?
Going from 6,000 to 10,000 for community engagement on AF8, tsunami and community integration, including translating things into te reo, Jim, that's just not going to do anything. Why wouldn't we, if we're serious about this, why wouldn't we look at increasing that a little bit more?
Because we've got some budget challenges as a council, and we asked everybody to only put forward bids which were essential and in the baseline, and everything else was subject to your consideration. So we have been doing that right across the council. So there are lots of bids that didn't get to you that, you know, we've had to manage one way or another.
Okay, any other questions, Councillor Redmond? In a minute, I'll just yep.
Jim, one of the other things that springs to mind is we have people in our pools who deliver education quite well to younger students. Have we, or are we, looking at whether there's some cross synergies there that could be utilised? Is that something we've done? It doesn't matter whether you have an answer to that, really. To be honest, it's just
yeah. Look, they're another delivery agent. Same with our libraries; they deliver a lot of services to youth as well. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. This is further questions. We come to comments or amendments.
I was just going to comment on page 566, for example, the warning siren system maintenance has gone from 7,000 to 17,000. And I did ask about that, and the reason for that is in the old days, somebody, an electrician or someone, would climb up a ladder and do his bit. Now you've got to have scissors to get up to that height, and 2 men, so the cost just runs away. So that's just the reality of health and safety. But I'd also like to say that I think we're very fortunate to have Chris and Brennan here. They're both very passionate about what they do, and when I first came upon civil defence many years ago, there was half a person, probably less actually, and I don't know how competent he was, but he carried the title, so we complied with the legislation, I suppose. So I think we are very lucky, and the gap that's been identified is primary school education. And I did talk to Brennan and Nick or Matt about, you know, some way that we could deliver that. It's a wee bit like eco-educate, do it in a rubbish sense. We want to do this, find somebody passionate to do it about civil defence. And if I make the analogy of the umbrella, civil defence really, we've got it. We don't probably give it a lot of importance until we actually need it, and then it becomes very vital and essential. So it's like having an umbrella, it's not much use until it rains, but you need to have one. So I think we've got a very good civil defence team, and thank you to Chris and Brennan and Matt, you're in your new position.
I'd just like to add in commentary that we've got a fantastic civil defence team, and Chris and Brennan both do an outstanding job. And if it wasn't for Chris's instigation, we wouldn't have the cadet program, the first in the country, and I'm really proud of that. It's a really fantastic program. Been along to the awards and just seeing how those young people have developed in this last 12 months, so it's really exceptional. In terms of a program that's education focused, I wonder if it might be worth us exploring. I'm happy to open I've been on really well with the Director of Education, whether it's worth a conversation with Coraline Child, and also talking with Tessa and the team around any discretionary funding that may exist to start that, to pilot it, see how that goes in terms of getting a resource, and then our council could look at perhaps a little further down the track adding additional resource to support you. I realise it's a difficult time, and budgetary wise we've asked everyone else to just to take a bit of a pull, so it's probably just something just not right at the moment. But it's not to say that it won't, it's not something at adding that down the track, but I think there's some other sources that we could look at that could potentially fund and pilot that work. But just Chris, team, thanks. We really appreciate what you do, and I think we are. I listen to our other councils, some of the forums I'm at. We are exceptionally well served here. And I don't liken it to what Councillor Redmond says. Actually, I think when we look at civil defence events and even the Pines Beach, thanks for keeping us in the loop, keeping us informed, Chris, and both Brennan. I was getting text messages through, so do appreciate the communication that comes through to us because it keeps us in the link. And you're down there and active and involved as our NZRT12 and other groups that are associated, so thanks for that. Kirsten?
Just a very quick comment. I mean, if AF8 happened tomorrow, we have to survive at least 3 days by ourselves. So it's asking, can each of our communities do it? I actually think they probably can because of the huge volunteer network we've got throughout the district, and that's partly due to the collaboration that's been developed by Brennan and Chris across all the emergency agencies and the community team through all their social services as well. So, and they work together really, really brilliantly. So I think we have got a safety net, but I do think that education of our population as to what they do would help a great deal, and I think it's something that we have to look at. With primary school, I've got that concern about duplication because I know that my kids would come home and teach me stuff. So they obviously get something in the curriculum. So it will be really good to see whether we can complement that and show them what the local stuff is as well as the national stuff. So the kids seem to often know a lot more than the adults do. So I think actually the biggest place we need to educate are those who think it's not going to happen to them.
Okay, further comments?
Quickly on that particular item. I mean, I can remember. We did cross education with the pool staff and Coast Guard, and I can remember standing in a room with children who were just about to leave to go to high school. We asked them a couple of questions, and the kid that was there was, I don't know, how old are they when they go to high school? 11, something like that? 11, 12, something like that. I don't know, I'm out of step with that. Whatever age they are. And this young fella answered the question. I said to him, how did you know that? He said, because you told me when you came and talked to us at primary school. I assume that's what you're looking for to make sure that that happens. But I really do push the cross agencies that we have here to deliver the message that you have. We're already in the educating on swimming. We're already, Coast Guards are doing their bit on their bit. You guys are doing your bit. It's actually about that collaboration with Tessa's team to make sure that we can make that education happen. The biggest thing you have to do is actually get the buy-in from the education sector, and that is the hardest bit.
Yes, just trying to get people to recognise that there are issues and they need to be well informed on them, and that came through very clearly about the younger parent generation, that they just don't want to know about that. They just seem to think that's all scaremongering, and that they weren't interested in even coming along to that age of 8. There are a lot of older people there, but that generation under 30s, they just weren't even interested, and that is really sad because it's something that they need to be aware of for their children's.
Okay, budget's done. Thank you. Thanks, team. Thanks for coming along. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate all the work you're doing, stepping up in the interim as well, and also in our new role as controller. So it's great to have you there. All right, so we've got left for my is information and technology support. We've got property, housing and elderly, district management and organisational HR and development. So they're the last 4. If we can break now, we're at 10 to, if we come back at 4:10, that will give you a stretch time for a cup of coffee, and we're in the home stretch. All right? Okay.